but if he was born in the 1940s, he would be worse than Hitler.
Yeah, cool.
My name is Jackson Waters. This is the Little Room Podcast, and today we have Isaac Shorr from Georgia. Is that right?
Sir, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, like what music you do, your background.
So originally I grew up in North Carolina. I lived in Phoenix for 3 years, then I was back in North Carolina, and I only moved to Georgia 3 years ago. So I always have like the question, like, do I identify as an Atlanta artist?
Yeah.
When I live in Atlanta, I spend most of my time in Boston because I go to Boston University.
Oh, sick. Yeah, that's dope.
And as for music, I was actually trained classically. I was a classical guitarist for first part of my musicking, and then there was always a piano in the house. And as a little kid, I never took lessons. I was just always kind of plinking around on it, figuring out what sounded right. And when it struck me that I wanted to play music to connect to people, like I loved just the feeling of people liking your music. You don't go to a party and bust out Carcassi's. You know, like, you're going to a party and you're playing some Taylor Swift or some Riptide. And despite them being, like, music theory-wise less difficult, there's always something about playing it right or introducing it right. You don't want to go to be the guy at the party and he just starts playing Wonderwall or something.
Yeah.
When it's like knowing what people want to hear those days, like getting in that mood and matching the energy, you know.
What made you switch from classical guitar to more like pop or like producing sort of guitar playing or whatnot?
I gotta say, honestly, it's just fun. Like, I knew I wasn't going to be a classical guitarist for the rest of my life, in the sense that I was going to do it for a career. So knowing that music's kind of like a hobby for me, it's just kind of a side thing. And then when I started writing my own music, or producing my own music, or playing something on the piano or whatever, it's just always kind of like a segue. You could say, like, maybe I'm jamming with somebody, I'm playing one of their song they want to hear, and say, oh, well, let me show you something I've been working on.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Because I guess that's, as an artist, you're always trying to get your music out.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, getting your music out is like one of the biggest things as an artist, no matter like what genre. I've only known like one other classical guitarist. So what got you into like classical guitar? Because most people just do like chords and maybe a simple melody line. But if you're doing like classical guitar, that's pretty dope.
I guess it started with my mom. She had my sister and I in violin lessons. And then when my hands were finally big enough to play the guitar, she said, all right, you can take that. And I didn't even think about different kinds of guitar. It was just kind of classical from the get-go. So I was playing one of those Spanish style nylon strings, and I didn't have my first acoustic guitar until maybe like 3 or 4 years later. And I remember, and I had that thing actually up until earlier this year, and I'd had it for so long, and I'd been through so many climates, living in Phoenix and being back in humid North Carolina, the neck had started to sink in from the tension of the strings.
Yeah.
Until it became unplayable to top, and I was like, well, I guess that's that. So I picked up a new one like 4 months ago.
Oh, nice.
And now I'm up to 7 guitars, I think.
Oh, snap. Like mainly acoustic or like acoustic electric, something like that?
So I have one acoustic electric, and that's the one that's a little rougher to play now. This one was just an acoustic. I have a backpacker, like a Martin backpack guitar. I have a banjo guitar, like a 6-string banjo.
Oh, snap.
Then I have 2 classical guitars.
Wow.
On top of that.
That's really sick. So what music do you try to produce? Like, is it trap, hip hop, like rock, something like that?
I definitely try and break out of my genre whenever I can. So the last song I put out actually was a rock song, my first rock song.
Nice.
And I was trying to go for that like 70s, 80s piano ballad. Otherwise, I make a lot of acoustic stuff. I wouldn't quite call it folk, but it's kind of almost leaning toward there, like folk pop. I definitely focus a lot on finger work, like those classical roots. You do a lot of finger picking that I guess would set you apart in some cases. And as for producing, a lot of it is it's not quite trap. Like, I'm not working on the 808s and the drums as much as the melody of the songs.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of it's kind of like narrative lyricism.
Okay, that's cool. So like your classical background has put you into like a new kind of just way of producing and stuff like that, not just like 808 drum beats and stuff like that, just something new.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, whenever I'm making a beat, the first thing I think of is whatever the melody's going to be, and whatever the chorus or the verse is going to be, I'm never thinking about the drums. And then the drums will fall into place when they do, but it's always about the musical aspect.
Yeah, no, I feel that too. And like, of course, like the drums have a musical aspect, but like but I feel like for me, that just comes in more naturally. I have to focus more on like you have just have to focus more on the lyrical and the more musical notation side of it first before I get into more percussion. Yeah. And what do you think? So, one of the questions you typed in was the intertwine, like how like genres intertwine with each other. And what do you think about that?
I started thinking about that a lot when Old Town Road became such a big hit.
Oh yeah, I remember
And
that.
there was all this controversy about whether it should count as a country song
Yeah.
as opposed to just a hip hop song. Like, if it samples a different genre, does it become partially that genre? And there's never really a clear definition of what a genre is. You know, like, it's like guidelines that can say it generally fits between these tempos. It has these kind of instruments. Maybe the lyrics focus on this, but there's no set rule saying this is that.
Yeah. And what I was doing some research, and so some college professors, it's not a huge thing, but I did some research on this thing called the three spheres of music, and that kind of intertwines the three basic genres of Western culture music. And so you have like the folk music, so and then you all intertwine in the center. So it's like the folk music, pop music, and art sort of side of music. And so pop music is more about like the industry and like, I don't want to say it's about money, but that's the one that makes all the revenue because it's popular. It's what people like most enjoy. And then next to it is like folk music, and that's about the communication of like tradition. And actually, Happy Birthday is technically a folk song because it's came from a while ago, and it's something that everybody knows, and it tells like a certain story. And so that's like folk music. It's less popular. It's popular, but it's not meant for the money. It's about for more of like the communication. And then you have like the art side of the music, and that's stuff that not a lot of people listen to. It's more about like, as one would say, the art of music instead of more of like what music is. It's like more like what I can build from it, like the more like technological music theories, like all that sort of thing. What can I build from that and expand? Like you have like experimentalists like John Cage, or this new contemporary composer named Andrew Norman, or stuff like that, where not really anybody listens to it, but they don't write for people to listen. They write to portray more of a perspective, a different side of music, and a different just genre, and all those kind of connect together. And when I was doing my research, I thought that was really interesting, and I thought that could really connect to yours, because even though they're super separate in their spheres, they all kind of connect a little bit to each other. And like with Old Town Road, it kind of goes into country and pop and stuff like that.
And something I like about artists these days, a lot of them, while their songs may sound different, they always have a unified theme, usually because they're working with the same producers, for example. But in, let's say, Kanye songs, you have that gospel undertone, or in Kendrick songs or in J. Cole songs, you have this piano undertone that you'll find in most things. And I think people don't really realize what attracts them to an artist sometimes. Like, you like a song from an artist, and you'll tend to like more songs from them just because there's something about that particular sound that resonates with you. Maybe not always the lyrics, but you realize, okay, this is the kind of thing I like. And I think a lot of that's going to have to do with what you grew up around.
Yes,
like me growing up in the South, maybe I hear Kanye's gospel sounds, I'm like, oh, you know, that it feels cool. Like, something about that reminds me of something that I already know. And I think I would put money on that. A lot of people who are trained classically would like artists like John Mayer, whose lyrics are phenomenal, but it's almost like the lyrics come secondary to how good he's at guitar.
Yeah, like
it's like every song is like.
Yeah, so like same thing with Hozier. Hozier. Yeah. A lot of people say they play guitar, but they only know chords. They only read tablature, and that's like, yes, you can technically play guitar, but people like Hozier and John Mayer, they actually like were trained in that sort of sense and understand how the guitar works and how music works. And then they're just like technicality of how they can work with guitar is just makes me just really like them more, actually. Like, it's weird, like, especially being classically trained. If you have like more of a trained background and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, makes me want to listen to you more. And like, I don't know, the acoustic guitar, not just with chords, but like adding chords and melody and just being a little more like a different feel around it rather than just chords, I feel like that makes me really want to listen to you more. So like John Mayer is definitely one of those people.
And some people have that great balance of they're making great music and they're making great lyrics, and it all comes together to make a complete song.
Yeah.
Like don't get me wrong, you're gonna get down to some Taylor Swift if it's
Oh, of
playing
course.
everybody's.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Is she the most proficient guitar player that I've heard on the instrument?
No.
No. But she makes lyrics that people can like, that people listen to. I'm like, okay, I see the appeal there. Or if you have somebody like, I don't want to say early Kanye, but we'll use him as an example.
Mhm.
Like, his lyrics were not always the best. Like some of them, or maybe even Life of Pablo Kanye, where he's,
Yeah.
you know, if I fuck this model, and she was like, okay, like is it so bad that it's art, or is it meant to be like this? Like, you're not quite sure how you feel about it, but you're still listening to the beat and thinking, even if there's no words here, I can nod my head.
Yeah.
You know, I can dance around.
And that kind of goes into like the pop genre of like popularly listening, because I've been starting to say this in multiple episodes, but the mere exposure effects, which is a psychological just dilemma of just repetition, really keeps you like listening to the same types of things. So like with Taylor Swift and other pop artists, they don't all sound the same, but they all have that same sort of headbeat vibe where like you don't even need to like them or know what they're doing in order to enjoy it. And that's why it's so popular, is because anybody can enjoy it, everyone can understand it. And it doesn't mean it's bad. Doesn't mean it's bad at all. It's just put into that more of that vague genre. And like with art, people have less understanding of it sometimes, and they're not used to it, so they just kind of back away from it or just don't listen to it because they just don't understand it. Like with Kanye's like lyrics, maybe when he just started out, maybe people weren't like too used to it. I don't know much of his background, but once his lyrics started getting better, people can actually understand and like hear his like beats and stuff like that, and be like, okay, I can, like you were saying with the background of like what you listen to, I can listen to this because of my background of listening to other things. Like it's similar, so I can actually listen to this, and I think that's kind of interesting.
It's really fascinating how music is progressing as we go through our lives. Like if you listen to a rap song from say 5 years ago, 7 years ago,
It's so different.
They don't have those thumping 808s. Like maybe the beat sounds relatively similar, but there's just no 808s to be heard.
Yeah,
you know,
808s was like a big bring back. Like, yeah, I could.
and it's great.
Oh
too.
yeah,
Like,
it's
don't
so
get me wrong.
good.
Like it just makes music so much better when you hear that thump come in. You're like, oh yeah, now we're
Yeah.
going. Something about that reverberation just gets you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then and actually I know some artists like this composer arranger named Adam Neely, on one of his arrangements of Carly Rae Jepsen's Run Away With Me, he did like 808, but he did it as a bass line, so he had different notes of the 808. And I feel like if people understand more of that, instead of just using it as a drum beat but more as a bass line, I feel like that can open up a lot of interesting things.
When you use the 808 as an instrument, things are definitely a lot different.
Yeah.
I feel like because it's so new, it's still kind of limited. Like because it came reintroduced as just part of your drums,
Mhm.
people just think of it as part of your drums. But you have guys like that who are thinking, you know, what more can we do?
And that would,
Like guitarists who bang on their guitar for percussion, or
yeah.
pianists who use their lower register. It's not the 808s, but kind of like has the bass
Mhm.
line. So it's just great that people are like endlessly creative with
Yeah,
this
and
stuff.
that's what really drives like music forward, because music is a language about communication and storytelling, but we can't tell the same stories as like, even though we're like growing more as a society, that like we can go back to those stories, but we have to create new ones, and we can't create new ones without being progressive. And I feel like people like that, just taking like something new and using it for a new thing, like 808s, instead of just a strict drum beat, you can use it as a bass line with different notation. That can really just bring a whole new vibe to a pop song or a rap song, something like that.
I feel like it has to progress, but at the same time, we definitely do have to tell the same stories over and over again, because it's, the way somebody tells a story might not appeal to you, but it might appeal to me.
Yes.
And then when somebody else tells that same story a different way, maybe you understand it finally, or you understand a new aspect of it that I would never get from it. Because some stories are so universal that they're never going to not be a story. People are always going to be falling in love and falling out of love.
Yes.
And you're always going to meet people, and you're always going to wake up one day after being in love and say, wow, that sucked. That was terrible, or something.
Yeah.
There's just things that are so universal, and maybe just because they're kind of like our recurring people, like maybe Kanye and Taylor are talking about the same story, but they just tell it.
Yeah, exactly. And that going back to like the three spheres, they all communicate similar stories, but in just different ways that appeal to different people. And
Yeah.
like there's so many artists out there, and like those three spheres are super vague, but like it's just a big backbone of like what like music is. And so thankfully to so many different artists out there, you can find something that really clicks with you no matter what it is. Like you can find someone or something.
Now, what do you think makes a good story?
Something that you can emotionally relate to or empathize with. And I talked about this before, but when you're listening to a pop song, you're not thinking about how you emotionally empathize with it. It's just like the feeling of like the bass, or just like the like the song, how it sounds. You can emotionally empathize, and that's what gives you grooving. But sometimes there's those like really deep songs when you really listen to it, where you can empathize because you understand their pain or you understand their experience. Once you relate to a song with your own personal experience, your feelings can be just like it can explode. And I think that's really beautiful. Once you find someone, or once you like write a piece that someone can personally relate to their own personal experience, now that is beautiful. And that's a big problem with pop music, is because they try to write music for the masses and not try to individualize. And while that works financially, I feel like you can lack the connection, rather than some other some other artists who are like a little lower on the knowledge list, or like indie artists. Because sometimes just indie artists just really connect to you, because that's how they connect, is through something more personal, because they don't have like that producer or that record label to really just be like, okay, you have 40 million followers, try to appeal to every single one of them. For indie artists, I feel like most people like them more is because they write things that are more personal to them and to you.
I feel like pop music's almost like it leaves the audience to do more work, because you can see yourself in some pop songs, definitely, but you're not going to see it in as wide a variety. And like, you really have to be listening to it. And a lot of times maybe you're listening to that song while something important in your life happens. You kind of encapsulate that memory in that song, even if that song has nothing to do with how you're feeling. Pop songs are kind of like a horoscope. You know, they're talking about something very broad, saying, I love this person, we met at a club, we're dancing until midnight, we're sitting on a rooftop, you know, things that are very so general that you're like, wow, they really know what I'm going through. You know, like I've sat on a rooftop with somebody, I've met somebody at a club, things like that.
Yeah, and just flashbacks to memories. Yeah.
And then you get to this, whatever independent artist you may be thinking of, and you're thinking, they're saying something, we're walking through the woods, all right, under the moonlight. We go back to her room. I say hi to her parents. Like, maybe they're just telling a very straightforward story about their night, but maybe you've had a night like that, and that's where you resonate. You're saying, they're not making a song that I can see myself in. It's like they're making a song that they saw me in.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. What's a big genre of like music that you really like to listen to, that you really connect with?
I listen to a lot of hip hop. Like, the music I listen to and the music I make are very different, but I've definitely listened to a lot of, you could say, narrative hip hop. So that'd be like some mid-range Kendrick, maybe some older Kendrick.
Yeah, I was just listening to him today.
Mid-range Big Sean.
Yeah.
Kanye, Miller, like, of course all the big guys, and then some smaller guys like up and coming like Smino. He's always forget the smaller artists I listen to whenever I saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess just narrative style. Like, I care definitely more about the type of song than the artist, I'd say.
Yeah, for me, depending on the artist, I just pick out things that I like from that artist, like their songs, and then I put them into into my own playlist. But sometimes I don't listen to the whole album, which sometimes is not the best thing. But maybe I don't like the artist themselves, but like their specific like single or some sort of music that they like. I really connected to that song by itself. And yeah, so I just take from many different genres. Sometimes I have like a playlist on Spotify called like literally everything, and that ranges from like jazz fusion to like pop songs to rap to just many things. It even goes to like the 1940s like doo-wop genre.
Wow.
So like if I'm in the car ride with someone, and then it goes from like Ed Sheeran to like Rockin' Robin. They're like, what?
I used to make my playlists, I guess, just as big as I felt they needed to be. Like I'd make my playlist chronologically, like 4 spans of emotions you'll feel, like a span of emotion after a breakup, or if you're having a good day, like waking up and like trying to keep the energy going. But now I make sure all my songs are 30 playlists or 30 songs exactly. So if I share it with somebody, it's like a very manageable amount.
Yeah.
Or it's like one good car trip of length, and I label them all "Have you heard?" but, and it'll have whatever the theme is. Like "Have you heard?" but "Facets of Love." "Have you heard?" but every song has a profound lyric. "Have you heard?" but.
That's interesting. I think I might have to steal that. I like that.
It keeps it organized, you know. It's interesting titles for people. And let me ask you this: what do you think about disassociating an artist from the music they make? Because you said you may not like an artist, but you may like one of their songs.
Yeah,
so.
or maybe not. It's not that I don't like them. It's more like I don't really listen to them. And then sometimes on like the Spotify thing, I'll just take out a song, like on like if it's on the radio or something, I'll take it from them. When I think about it, disassociating an artist from their song is not really fair to the artist, but I feel like with like the way Spotify works, and even like YouTube or something like that, they're like they kind of cause that disassociation a little bit. Like they give you like a little sample of their music, and then I just like add it, but like so like I like listen to them, but I don't never really connected. So I think it's a little unfair to the artist because they probably have something like way bigger, but I've just only heard their one single or just taken it out of their album that I've never heard of. And sometimes it's just that I don't have time or just like that energy to try something new, because listening to a new artist is a very scary thing. Like it's like, it's weird to say it's scary, but it is, because it's like you're spending your time focusing on something that you're not used to, and that change can like lead you to a whole new direction of what you like in music. And so sometimes it's just that I don't have the mental energy to just be like, I like their song, but, and then they have like so much more, but I just don't have that time to like really listen and like be like, do I like this? Do I not like this? So yeah.
It's definitely hard to fabricate the naturalness of finding new music, because like when you hear a new song, it's like you're not trying to find a new song, it just happens. So when you sit there trying to listen through someone's album or something, it's so easy for it to all blur together. It's hard to focus and think. It's just not happening like that. And I started when I'm playing video games, I'll put it on somebody's album, like somebody I already like, a whole album of theirs that I haven't heard straight through.
Yeah.
So that way, like if something catches my ear naturally, I can kind of turn and say, oh, okay, I'll add that one and just go through it. Like last night I was listening to J. Cole's Born Sinner, and I love like 10 songs off that. I'm like, what about the other 11 or whatever it is? You know, like, have I missed anything?
Yeah, and then actually, when we were talking about this earlier today, when I just got off work, I listened to most of Logic's album. I don't know what the album's called, but it's like this one song. I like this one because I was listening to one of his songs, and I can probably pull it up, but then I've never listened to the album, so I was off work, and then I was listening to that song again. I'm like, I've listened to this single so many times, but I've never actually listened to the album. So I actually took myself and it's called 100 Miles and Running, and the album's called YSIV, and so I was listening to that song, and it's awesome because he's rapping so fast, and it's like the beats like super just amped up, and I was like, I think I gotta listen to it more. And it turns out I actually really like the whole entire album, but it's just just starting something new is definitely a big step, even if it just means that you're listening to it. And so yeah, like doing something to like if you're doing something and you're listening to music, that's a little bit easier to like just listen to a whole album and pick and choose your songs. But Spotify, in a good way and a bad way, kind of dissects singles out of their, like the artist singles or certain songs out of their entire album and put it into your playlist, which is good because they're letting you know that this album exists, that this person exists, but like they're not really showing you everything.
Music is a lot like people in the sense that when you're not looking for good people in your life, that's when you're gonna find them. And it's also you can use like the analogy of a flower. All right, say you like somebody, has a friend or a relationship sense, like you just want to get to know them better. The second you pick a flower from a field, like physically just pick it up, it's dying. And it doesn't matter if you put it in a vase or in the sun or anything. The second you take the flower out of the ground, it's gonna start dying. Like, it just doesn't happen like that. That's not how you appreciate a flower. But if you just see the flower, like if you're just walking along and you see it and you look at it for a while, or like you build your camp around that or whatever, like then it's there for you, you know. And the same thing with music. The second you're looking for good music, like maybe
maybe you find something.
But if you like try and force yourself to like a song, there, it's not gonna happen. You have to be walking along and it just kind of comes into.
And it's just like you have to be in like a certain like mindset if you're trying something new. Like I have many different types of genres on my playlist, but I only listen to them if I have a certain feeling. Like I have my sad songs if I'm feeling sad. I have my classical playlist if I'm feeling a little more like focused or something to like really listen to that. But I won't go to my classical playlist if I'm feeling like trying to get myself amped up with Stravinsky. That's not how it works. Like even though I love classical music, that's just not how my mindset is. Sometimes for some people it is, for me it's not. And I feel like that's the same when you're looking for music. And it's like the same if you're like watching TV. If it's like you want to start a new show, you've heard about it, you see great reviews, but if you're not like ready to start something new, don't force yourself, because it's just gonna like leave you on your phone just like kind of bored.
The emotional investment of starting a new show these days on Netflix. Like Netflix just makes so many good shows. Like I've never actually watched a Netflix show and been like, oh, this is not a good show.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't personally like it, I recognize why it's good, or objectively, and somebody else I can guarantee is gonna like this.
Yeah.
Like, Netflix just makes
yeah, Netflix is pretty good. Quite good.
Like, well, let me ask you this. On the topic of disassociation earlier, what do you think about taking an artist, like separating an artist's character from their music? Like controversial right now is this guy 6ix9ine. All right, and he's done some things like people maybe didn't like him because of whatever crimes he did before. I know he was like video of him performing a sexual act, and there's a 13-year-old there or something. I'm not sure if it was like him and the girl herself, and maybe you hated him because of that, or maybe you hate him because he snitched in prison. Like
the thing,
there's people on both sides that are gonna dislike him, but maybe he makes a song you still like. What do you think about still listening?
Like, okay, so I'm gonna go into this classical thing because I have two points. So I think his first name's Richard. So Wagner, he was like the most famous. He's one of the most like famous composers. He did Ride of the Valkyries, like bum ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum bum, like super famous stuff like that. One of the most beautiful music. But if he was born in the 1940s, he would be worse than Hitler. And he was one of the worst people ever. But his music was so good, and I feel like you can disassociate the music from the music from like the composer or the producer or the writer or the rapper or whatnot. But a lot of the times, besides Wagner, because Wagner wrote stuff that really wasn't his beliefs. He wrote stuff, but like it didn't show his standpoints and views on political stuff. But with 6ix9ine, his attitude is in his music. So when you're listening to his music, you're like really listening to his attitude towards things. And I don't even want to call it political because that's a very vague. He's just like screaming into a mic. But when you listen to it, you're actually like listening to kind of what he's done, what he can do, and just kind of his like views on things. So you can disassociate attitude with artists, but also their attitudes in the music. So that's what makes them write the music, is with their attitude and emotional standpoint. So you might like their music, but their music definitely is not different than who they are most of the time.
I can see that completely. Like maybe just because there's not people, these artists we see are not people we know personally. Like when you look at them and you hear their music, something about that just instantly clicks for you. Like you look at them and you're like, they look like the kind of person who would make this music.
Yeah.
Like 6ix9ine does not look like a nice singer. He looks like someone who
screams into it.
Who just screams, yeah. Like, and I of course I've heard some of his stuff. I've tried to make a conscious effort to avoid it for the most part. Just like I don't agree with some of the stuff he's done to that extent, but at the same time, like the things I have heard, like I can't deny, like I could see why at a party if someone's shouting this, I'd be like,
Yeah, because it's like hype, and sometimes you don't even like listen to like the lyrics or what he's trying to do. It's just hype. You're in that mood. You see other people and you connect to that. Again, being emotionally empathetic to the song. It's like it fits your vibe, and then you go with it. And so like there's definitely exceptions to that, but again, so yes, you can disassociate their attitude with their music, but you got to understand that a lot of the time they're intertwined. So it's like it's kind of some gray area, and it just kind of depends on what they kind of write, depending on like if we say, I don't know, Macklemore, and he did some really bad things, like he was into drug addiction and all that stuff, but his music did not really portray that. It portrayed him rising up from it. That's disassociation by itself. So like his actions weren't really much of his music. It was his music trying to like change his actions, if that makes sense. But with 6ix9ine, it was more like his actions and his music, his like actions and music were intertwined, and it just related to each other greatly. And with Richard Wagner, it was more like Wagner and then his music. They were totally separate. So you can like his music but really hate the person because they were just different. So I think there's like three sort of different things about that kind of go with disassociation and association, actually.
It feels like 6ix9ine is saying, I do these bad things and I'm happy that I do them. And Macklemore was saying, like, I did these bad things and maybe sometimes I still do, but like I'm a bad person trying to be good.
Yeah.
Like his music, like this big series of him trying to forgive himself.
Like the Gemini album.
Oh yeah. And just being reflective and finally being on the other side of that and looking back. And I feel like it's like an escape for people, you know, because everybody, when they tell a story, they want to be the good guy. So you have so many of these rappers talking about things they did in days when they maybe weren't as economically well off. And you have people who never experienced that kind of thing, but they love it. Like they can't get enough of that because it's almost like the Wild West. They're hearing about this lifestyle that they've never encountered, this gangster lifestyle, lower class and all this stuff, and they're like, wow, this sounds great. They're doing all these things. Maybe they killed somebody, but it's all for their family, you know, like they're the Lone Ranger outlaw, kind of
like the
vibe,
anti-hero.
You know? The anti-hero, yeah, exactly that. You know, it's like it gives people, I guess it lets people deal with their own feelings, because a lot of people, when they don't encounter these things, they're scared.
Yeah.
Like I'm not above admitting I'm adopted into a white family, and since I grew up in rural North Carolina at first, I did not see many other black people.
Yeah.
And like when I did, I just didn't understand. Of course, I didn't associate myself with them because I had already kind of seen myself as white for my whole life. And then at first I was like, why do they look like that? I'm kind of scared. Like I don't understand. You know?
Yeah.
And of course I was only like 7 years old then, and then you grow into yourself and realize that you're also part of that. But you have some of these white kids in the suburbs that are hearing these things. They're hearing at school maybe about a drug dealer, and they're like, they just want to understand that lifestyle because it's something they don't have. And they hear this music and they're thinking, oh, this is cool. This is justified. Like I get why people are doing this. It gives them a reason to, I guess, put themselves in those shoes, you know, because it sounds fun.
Yeah.
Being on the other side.
Yeah.
Like wherever you are, it always sounds fun on the other side.
Yeah, music can be an escape from reality, or just connect with reality. I feel like music can be like, especially in art, like that genre of like pop or like whatnot, or like indie music can really be connected with those two things to escape reality. Like if you're listening to 6ix9ine, you never really, like, for me personally, I never listened to him, but like if it was at like a dance, I would still jump around and just be like, oh, whatever, yeah, just whatever. And that's just escaping reality into something that you're just vibing with. And then you can listen to music to be in reality where your emotions really connect with that artist in a personal understanding. It can really help you go through things and understand different perspectives, like you were saying.
You don't listen to music to keep you where you're at.
Yeah,
like music,
it's going somewhere.
It's like music is to keep you from jumping off the roof, or you listen to music because you're afraid you'll be stuck on the ground forever. Like it's to pull you up or to get you down. It's to get you somewhere.
Yes.
But you don't, like, you're not in a mood and you're like, let me listen to a song so I stay exactly in the same mood right now.
Yeah. Music is a strange drug that it's a definitely strange drug that it takes you where you want to go. It's not something that, like, it's very voluntary of the emotions that you're trying to portray. like I want to do this, so music's like, okay, let me take you there, and then music's like, or like I'm like, I want to kind of go down low, and then music's like, I got you. And I feel like that's kind of quite beautiful, actually. Like, no matter what genre there is, like, it can take you there.
And I guess it goes back to what we were saying earlier, like your experiences as you're growing up are gonna feed into that, you know?
Definitely.
Like some songs are just never gonna take me anywhere. There's nothing really I can do about it, even if I wanted
Yeah.
to. Like some songs don't connect to.
Exactly.
And they could be a genre you've never heard before, but you hear something about it and you relate to it instantly.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that sense of home that you're kind of longing for in music. Like it's nice to have that familiarity of things you already know, and that excitement, just like meeting someone new, of hearing that new song, and you're like, I think I just fell in love a little.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And that's the beauty and the vastness of the different types of music, because with each genre, they have the similar purpose of just escaping or to like be together. And I think that's like really cool. No matter what genre you listen to, it all has the same purpose.
Well, let me ask you this: with all these different genres, of course, they all have their own origins. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like blues, you can relate it back to slave hymnals, right?
Mm-hmm.
During the Civil War era. Or you could say folk music's coming from the American South, all right? Trap music from Atlanta, Chicago style, of course, you know,
Yeah.
Chicago surrounding areas. But once the music's already made and established, do you think any group of people, whether that be racial or geographical, have a right to that sort of music? Like, do you think appropriation within music exists?
Yeah, like, are you saying, wait, say that again? Like, are you saying that, like, geographically speaking, like, where the music started has that right to, like, keep it there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they have the right, but I think it's also the responsibility to not hold on to that right. Because music is to communicate, and you can't communicate when someone speaks a different language. And there's always going to be people who understand where the origins are from, but the beauty about music is how it spreads. And like with New Orleans, or like where it came from and stuff like that, with the African rhythms, and then just like the stories that they told, it was just a couple dudes just messing around, or like just communicating the best way they could, and that spread. And I feel like letting it spread is more beautiful than being an enclosed society. You can do that, it's your right to, but I feel like it's your responsibility to let it prosper into something bigger.
So in the modern day, we have people who kind of rise to this internet fame without, sometimes there's not many obstacles. Some people just do it because of their personality. Some people really, they go out of their way to try and make memes about themselves or whatever. Like Lil Nas X, he had a huge meme account, you know, and he'd always promote songs through there. But you have artists like Bad Baby, I think it's pronounced, that the Cash Me Outside girl, you know, who is, from my understanding, white.
Yes, I think so. I can't tell.
I think so. Exactly that. It's hard to tell. She gets these braids, these beads. Her skin seems to appear darker and darker, and her music, like the way she speaks in her music, it doesn't make much sense to me. Like hearing the ebonics and the inflections and the accents with which she speaks, then hearing how her parents speak, I'm saying that doesn't line up.
Yeah.
Like that didn't just happen naturally.
Yeah. So that one, because she's so there's one of the exceptions where someone who doesn't understand the culture of the music that she's doing, or something like that, where she actually takes it into more of like, almost in a way, a satire. Like, it's almost satirical the way she's doing it. She's not intentionally making fun of. She's just doing something that she's trying to copy instead of trying to incorporate into her own sound. And so the way she's copying makes her look like a complete a-hole, and just ignorant, and just kind of not even like a musician, and she's kind of not. But those are one of those people who take the wrong message of music. So she's trying to be something that she's not, and unfortunately that's not biting her in the butt. It's actually, so like, people are like, she's being infamously supported, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just driving her more to just try to be something she's not, instead of taking the things that she enjoys and fusing it together into her own sound. And so there's going to be people like that all the time, and you're always going to take those risks. There's always going to be like the 98% of good, and then there's that 2% who take it the wrong way. And sometimes that 2% really just drive up higher than the 98%. But yeah, like my final thought before we close, I just think music is meant to be spread. And that's the big reason why I'm doing this podcast, is to talk to people with different perspectives, to educate others, to have like that music and culture spread.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for having me on
Yeah,
your show
of course.
today. It was absolutely great talking to you.
Yeah, it was so much fun, man.
I had some ideas. I definitely want to look into those 3 spheres of music.
Yeah.
You were a lot of the stuff I listen to intersects. So that'd be cool to take those 3 spheres and then kind of graph.
Yeah, actually, yeah,
of your music.
that's definitely one of my ideas, just to really try to like just narrow it down into something. Yeah, just have like a list of like all the genres and stuff like that. I'm really gonna try that. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, Isaac. And this is Jackson Waters closing off on The Little Room, and I'll see you next time.